Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this video is to introduce you to the concept of leadership. And we know that you know things about leadership, and you probably are a leader yourself in many different ways. Hopefully this foundational video will help you see things a little bit differently and help lay down a solid foundation for you as you pursue the concepts related to leadership. So it really is important to me that you continue to grow and continue to recognize how valuable the position of a leader really is to every organization. They really are the ones that have the biggest influence on organizational culture. They're the ones that have the biggest influence on whether or not people are going to accept change, for instance. And so organizations are constantly needing to grow. And so it really means that if you want to be the best leader that you can be, or help the leaders in your organization be the best that they can be, you really have to understand what it is that the most effective leaders do. And so you really have to, if you want to be an effective leader, be able to attract the best people. Let's face it, leaders need to be able to do a lot of different things, but they cannot do absolutely everything in the organization. So one of the smartest things that great leaders do is hire the most competent people possible. And then they create an environment where they want to give their best. Great leaders need to be able to motivate people and be motivated, and they have to be able to solve problems. Let's face it, everything that happens is related to our choices and then of course decision making. So that's the problem solving process that great leaders really need to do. And so those can be difficult tasks for some people, but the more you do things, hopefully the better skills that you have. So consider these questions as we talk about these different aspects of leadership. Have you ever seen poor leaders in action? What do poor leaders do? And how do you feel about good leaders? And so think about that. So very often when you approach any situation, you have to consider the fact that you have the power to influence every situation. Are you considering what needs to be considered? We could look at things from an organizational perspective or from a global perspective, but leaders truly have lots of social influence. They're the ones who are doing the initiating usually and guiding. They're the ones that are providing new direction, and they're the ones that are influencing others to accomplish whatever tasks need to be done. As we talk about having a social conscience, you have to think about great leaders like Martin Luther King and Susan B. Anthony, for instance. Think about how fates of nations are effective, like Alexander the Great and what Joan of Arc did. And then think about what happens with civilizations, like with philosophers like John Stuart Mill and Adam Smith, for instance, how these great leaders influenced whole societies. There really are essentially three different types of leaders if you think about it. Teachers who are rule breakers and value creators. There are heroes, reasonable to create causes and noble work. And then rulers. These are people who are motivated to dominate other people by exerting their power. And so, of course, there are many, many, many different types of leaders out there that you may consider, like Socrates, for instance, or Buddha, Confucius, Gandhi, Jesus, Martin Luther King, Karl Marx. You may think of many different types of leaders: Beethoven, Columbus, Einstein, Michelangelo. And you may have a different feeling as I bring up different names as you think about what it is that they did. But in order to be a leader, you have to be a follower. And so that really is one of the most important concepts out there, is what did people do to move other people to make changes? You can't deny it, but Hitler, as bad as he was a really effective leader out of accomplishing his goals, right? And Napoleon the same way. So you really have to think about what it is that a leader does in general terms, and essentially they're moving people, followers, to make a difference, and they could be negative or positive, as we talked about before. So I want everybody in this class to be a positive leader and make a positive influence that creates win-win outcomes, in my perspective. There are different traits that can be considered. There's trait theories out there, and you have to recognize that there's no single set of perfect leadership traits out there, and so we're going to talk about different qualities of each individual. They need to have drive, essentially, and persistence, and they really need to be open to seeking new ventures and problem solving, and they need to take initiative to make a difference on a social level. They have to have self-confidence, and they have to really know who they are, and they have to have a willingness to accept consequences of decisions and actions, and a readiness to absorb interpersonal stress that happens. So leaders need to be able to tolerate frustration. They need to have the ability to influence other people, and they have to have the capacity to be able to interact with different people in order to move and influence change. So there are different traits that you should consider. Leaders versus followers, for instance, or effective versus ineffective, or high echelon versus low echelon. You have to be able to understand different competencies that leaders must have. And so think about things like justice and judgment, wisdom and counsel, shrewdness and cunning, valor and action, for instance. Leaders must be able to establish clear expectations and understand knowledge, skills, and attitudes of their organization and the people in their organization, I should say. Leaders can be both male and female. When President Woodrow Wilson was very sick, Mrs. Wilson, Edith Wilson, took over the United States for a while, and that was an interesting social phenomenon that took place in our history. Leaders truly must understand that what it is that they do influences other people. And so we see people who can rise up in any organization to make a positive change. What comes to mind is Poland's Lech Walesa, and he became a labor relations leader in the 1980s. And so people naturally emerge into leadership positions when they need to. Leaders have to be able to recognize the circumstances that are in hand and recognize the kind of performance that needs to take place. And so wherever you are, whatever type of organization you are in or want to lead, you have to recognize what it is that effective leaders must do and where they need to do it. So that really takes in mind that you have to always have integrity and be honest. What goes around truly comes around. You've probably heard that saying before. And so you have to really have a clear understanding of what it is that your people do, and then be able to have the people building schools to help them be their best in what they do. So things that make leaders feel satisfied is a feeling of power and prestige, an opportunity to help other people. Usually leaders have a higher income than the people that they lead. The respect and status is important to them. Opportunities for growth and advancement, and then a feeling of being in a position of knowledge and being given an opportunity to control money and other resources. Some of the frustrations that leaders are said to have, if you're considering being a leader, you have to consider the fact that you may not be compensated for all the time that you work. You may be faced with many problems. You may not have enough authority to carry out the responsibility, or you may feel lonely at the top because, generally speaking, leaders can't be friends with the people that they lead in order to be able to be seen as fair and effective. Too many problems involving people. Very often people bring their work problems to work, or they create work problems among themselves. And then there are organizational politics that take place, and the pursuit of conflicting goals. So these are some of the frustrations of leaders. Caring leaders. I think this is really, from my own perspective, is the only way to be. Leaders truly must care about their people, and they must be very clear on where they're going to focus their energies in order to get things done. And so in order to do so, they have to care about the task, and they also have to care about their people. And so there's lots of theories about that and why that works. Theodore Roosevelt advocated for a life of engagement and meaning, and that really means being very clear on what your goals are, being committed to those goals. Sometimes the goals may not be so clear and tangible. So usually when you dive in, you get more clarity in what those things look like. And then as you dive in and you start making a positive difference, then other people start to feel emotions, which moves them to take different actions. So leaders truly need to be unselfish, and they need to be ready and eager to listen to other people. As many stakeholders as possible need to really feel like they're understood. Because loyalty is an important characteristic that leaders need, and leaders need to be loyal to their people, and loyalty is earned. So in order to gain loyalty, you have to earn loyalty. One of the great CEOs of Scandinavian Airlines said something that I think was really profound. And he said, this is Jan Carlzon, and he said, there are two great motivators in life. One is fear, and the other is love. And you can manage people by fear, but if you do, it will diminish both them and you. But the path to success truly begins with the heart. And so to me, that really speaks about how important it is for leaders to recognize who their stakeholders truly are, their followers and their customers. And if you're doing things to make people fear you're probably not going to be as effective in the longer run. You want to do things out of love. And of course, I mean in an appropriate way, right? So you have to have a commitment to your goal and a concern for the people who are involved. Without commitment, there really is no passion. And without concern, there really is no loyalty. So the philosophy of what's in it for me, and in that case leaders, that me is your stakeholders, your followers, and your customers. You really have to really care about that very genuinely. I'm very famous for saying we all have BS meters inside of us. So you have to really remember that as a leader, it really is all about your followers, giving them the directions and the resources that they need to be successful, and helping them recognize how genuinely important they are to you as a leader. When a leader cares, others truly become focused and energized. So leaders truly make the biggest difference possible. One of my favorite authors, John Cotter from Harvard University, says that too many organizations are overmanaged and underled. So they have too much emphasis on control, not enough on motivation and creativity, and leaders need to be developed at all levels of responsibility. So very often people get promoted on the job because they're good at doing what they do, but it truly takes a different set of skills to lead people than it does to do the jobs of what people do. So essentially, as a leader, you really have three main functions that you need to do. You need to make sure that you direct people, and so that really includes planning. You need to align people properly, and that means organizing people, and then energizing people to accomplish results, and that is direction. So planning, organizing, and directing. Well, that in a nutshell is what I have to say about the importance of setting the stage as a leader. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and you can take something away with it that you can apply in your life, and hopefully you see things a little bit differently. And more than that, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it.